Hey folks, I'm Nicole Gilbert and this is Nicole Gilbert Quilts. In today's project, we are going to be making this fast, fun, and super easy home decor set of pot holders and a hot pad. Let's dive in. Okay, so now it's time to gather our supplies to make our pot holder and hot pad set. So first, I'm going to be using mini charm packs, and in this case I'm going to be using Ladybird by Crystal Manning. This is distributed by Moda Fabrics. I love mini charms for projects like this because it saves you so much of the cutting work, not to mention that I was able to pick these fun little guys up for $4 at my local quilt shop, which is a great deal and really makes this an inexpensive project. Because we all know that good quilt shop quality fabric tends to usually be the most expensive part of our projects. So we'll be using the mini charm squares, and 2 packs of mini charm squares will make you 2 pot holders and the hot pad. So it's really great. It's only 2 of these packs. Okay. Now, when we're making these, we want to make sure that they've got the proper insulation. You might see some similar projects out there that just use cotton batting or even soft and stable, which are obviously fantastic products. But they're not great in this instance because we want to make sure that what we're putting inside of our project has a really good insulating factor, because we want to be protecting our hands and protecting our kitchen tables, our countertops. We want to have a good insulation. There's 2 products out there that I recommend. One is Insulbright, which is phenomenal. The other, which is what I have here, is Wrap and Zap. And Wrap and Zap is by Pellon. You can find this at most major retailers. They're usually the packages are usually about 45 inches by a yard, which one package of this will more than make this set of projects. It'll make then some, to be quite honest. But we want to make sure that we're using some sort of insulating factor. So we'll be using that. We'll also be using cotton batting. Now, it's going to be just one thin layer. We'll put it on top of our Wrap and Zap when we're ready to make that sandwich. The reason why we want to use cotton batting is that we want something that has an absorbent factor. And like Wrap and Zap, it does have an absorbency. You'll notice, especially with Wrap and Zap, it feels like cotton batting, really. But we want something that's there strictly for absorption, so that we're dealing with the condensation that can happen with some of the items that we may lay on top of our hot pad. So we'll use cotton batting. Now, you'll have 2 fat quarters. One fat quarter will be the backing for our hot pad. The other fat quarter will be the backing for both pot holders. So in this case, I'm using these 2 different fabrics. Both go beautifully with the Ladybird, but they're a little different, so it'll give a little bit more of a complex vibe to our set, so everything's not perfectly matchy-matchy. That's kind of why we're doing a scrappy top. We want it to be cohesive, but not mass produced. And then finally, for the binding, I'm using this gingham because, come on, who doesn't love a gingham or striped binding? Like, hello. But this will complement that Ladybird fabric beautifully. It's just a plain navy gingham. Of course, this is a blank selvage. I want to say this is from Sunday Stroll, which I believe is a Bonnie and Camille from Moda. Yes. Let me open this up. Yep. It is from Sunday Stroll by Bonnie and Camille, distributed by Moda. This is a fabric line that came out last year. You may still be able to find it on Etsy via an Etsy retailer. And you know what? Your local quilt shop might still have some of this in stock, but it's a nice big gingham. So that's what I'm going to be using to put together our pot holders and hot pads. So our first step is actually going to be to construct the patchwork tops of the pot holders and the hot pads. So I will see you in a moment. Okay, so I have just created my tops for my pot holders and my hot pad. This is my hot pad. It is 5 mini charm squares by 8 mini charm squares, so 40 altogether. And then my pot holder is 4 by 4, so 16 altogether, and I've made 2 of those. And they're just very basic patchwork construction. Super easy to do. You'll make, 4 rows of 4 and then sew them all together. You will make 8 rows of 5 and then sew them all together. I've chosen to press my seams open just because that's what I prefer to do. I like pressing my seams open, but that is totally and completely up to you. Whatever you're more comfortable with. This isn't going to be a big deal. You're not going to run into a bunch of seam nesting issues. So there's that. Okay, so now that we've got these tops all together, we're going to take our squares of Insulbrite and cotton batting. And so I actually am using, like I showed in the supply video, I'm using Rapazap, which looks very similar to a cotton batting. And then I am using the actual cotton batting. So we're just going to layer them. And you'll see mine aren't perfect squares because it's just batting. They just have to be larger than my top. And we're just going to layer them. And you want to layer it so that we put our backing fabric right side down. Then we place our Rapazap or Insulbrite on top. Then on top of that, we pay our cotton batting. So there goes our cotton batting. And then on top of that, we lay our patchwork top that we just created. And then you could baste however you like. In something as small as this, I usually don't even baste at all. I know, it's a bad habit, but it's just so much quicker. Also, you can spray baste, you can pin baste, whichever you prefer. You can go ahead and do that now. But you will create 3 of these little quilt sandwiches. So you will have 2 pot holder sandwiches that are the 4 by 4. And then you will have 1 big sandwich for your hot pad. And that was just the sound of me tossing a bunch of random notions out of my way because my background fabric was kind of, somewhere it didn't need to be. So we will place this down and then we will place this on top. And so now I've got 3 of these little sandwiches that are ready to be quilted. And you can quilt these any way you want. You can do stitch in the ditch, you can do some free motion. I'm probably going to do some version of echo quilting, meaning just off of the ditch. Not really sure how dense I'm going to make it because, at the end of the day, it is just a pot holder and hot pad. But on the flip side of it, it's a decor item for your house, so why not? So I am going to go head over to my sewing machine and quilt all of these, and I will see you in a moment. Okay, folks. So now I am back from the sewing machine. I have quilted these quite hefty at this point. You'll feel a weight to them. Quilt sandwiches that are our pot holders and hot pad. And one added thing that I do is that I tend to, and this is probably the bag maker in me, because I'm used to using things like stabilizer and the product that you're probably most familiar with is Soft and Stable by Annie. And it's hefty. And what can happen is things get really bulky. And so what I've tended to do is 1/8 of an inch or less around the edge. I just sew all the way around. And you can kind of probably see that a little better on the backing. you can see this line right here. And what that does is it just kind of seals everything in. And once I trim it up, it makes the edges of the project real smushed. So it makes it a lot easier to bind, which is our next step. So we're going to trim this up just like you would any other quilt sandwich. Just keep in mind that it does not have to be perfect. We are binding it. So just make sure it's nice and straight and that you have, as little overhang as possible, but, just neaten it up. That's all we're doing here. We're kneading it up. And then what we're going to do is we're going to bind it. And so for our binding, we have those 2-inch by width of fabric strips. And what we're going to do here is you will use 1 strip to bind 1 pot holder. So we can take that, set it aside. This is going to go with the second pot holder, set it aside. But for the hot pad, 1 strip isn't going to do it. So we're going to take these 2 strips that we have left and we're going to sew them end to end. And I like to sew them on the diagonal. So I will actually sew right on the diagonal at a 45-degree angle. And that's just so that the seam doesn't all end up in one place while I'm binding. It kind of gets spread out. So we're going to go ahead and stitch right there, clip the excess. We'll have this nice long strip and then we'll bind. And so I'm going to go ahead, trim this up and show you what this looks like all completed and bound. Now, if you're interested in seeing a binding video, I do have one coming up shortly. So if you go below to get the pattern for this project, you will get notified when that binding video is released. All right, folks, I'll be right back. All right, folks, so there you have it. I am back from my sewing machine. My pot holder is beautifully bound. I have 2 of them, and I have a hot pad. It's super simple project that is so much fun to make. It is pretty low on the material necessity because you can just use those 2 small mini charm packs, or you could just use scraps. As long as it's a 2.5-inch square, you can get those squares from anywhere. And I really enjoy this super scrappy look. All right, folks, I can't wait to see what you get into. I'll see you next time. Bye for now.